Hello, how's it going? You're welcome to the Knock on KCLR and Scoreline.ie's weekly rugby podcast. Joined this week to my left hand side with Tom Crotty. Tom, how's it going?
Hi, Stephen. All good at the moment.
Good stuff. The other fellas, usually have James Blanchfield and Johnny Tobin on, but the boys are tied up. It is coming to the end, and it is actually the end, Tom, of the local rugby season as well. So the podcast will sort of change slightly over the next few weeks. We'll follow, of course, Leinster's progress if they get beyond the Champions Cup semi-final this week. We'll follow their progress on to the final and probably take a summer break then after that. Let's see how it goes until the Southeast Cup or whatever is back next year, Tom.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, anyway, we'll chat about what we have in front of us. Yourselves, the J2 plate last weekend. Very disappointing, I suppose, to lose that one out, Tom. Considering the seconds team that you had, it's such a good league. And, you know, all that momentum as well. And, you know, the game against Kilkenny for the first, but just that whole club sort of momentum as well. It wasn't expected, I don't think. Not from my point of view, anyway.
Yeah. Well, look, we're very disappointed on Sunday. It kind of aimed to try and win the. Well, it's what the boys deserve. That's what they had a really good league season, but and then kind of lost the cup game when they were missing a few players and lacking a bit of experience that day. And we had two really good games running into it against Gorey and a really fantastic game against Kilkenny. And to be honest, if we played the same way we played against Kilkenny, we would have won. We definitely would have won at the weekend. Look, you can give all the excuses. We can give a lot of excuses for a game and winning or losing or whatever happens, but I think a lot, like it's a long old journey up. There was a hot, warm day, and we decided to go up on a bus. I don't know whether that was the right idea or not, but I think they kind of just the focus kind of left a bit. I know lads were probably thinking it's the last game of the season, and you know, and I don't know if our focus was 100% coming into it, even though you know they wanted it to be, but they started very poorly, had a really, really poor start. Just didn't seem to get into the game. We just had a ridiculous amount of penalties. There was 12 penalties. I think it was 12 penalties in the first half, 2 yellow cards against us, and I think North Meath had 2 penalties against them. So if you balance that out, that is not good. So by the end of the first half, we were losing 11-0. They got 2 kicks. It was 6. Then they got a breakaway try. We tried to get in the corner. Their fullback was a young fella, extremely good kicker. Got the conversion. So, we went in at half time. Tried to regroup. Came back out. Started playing some good rugby again. Got a penalty, so it was 11-3. We got down into their 22. We had a penalty given to us, so we played advantage. This was on the left hand side of the post inside the 22. The ball went across to the right hand side. The referee seemed to give another penalty, another advantage to us. Then the ball was whipped across eventually was whipped across to the left hand corner. Callum Murphy went in the corner, but got his head nearly taken off with a high tackle. And we didn't know whether he scored or not. The ref went over to the linesman on that side. They had a conversation. Then he came over to the linesman on our side. And all of a sudden, then 2 captains were brought in, and it was a penalty against Carlow for an infringement. Now, right. I don't know how I know an infringement will supersede, but if it's before a penalty is given, but as far as we could see, we had been given 2 advantages, and nobody heard advantage being called. That advantage was over, and if you're playing an advantage, a penalty, the first penalty counts, not the second one, and the second one was for pushing off the ball. I don't know how seen. If it is an incident, fair enough, but it was really, really frustrating. then the lads just everything just went really against us. We got beaten in the scrum a couple of times, give away was a couple of penalties against that in scrum. We tried to come back. They brought on a player who would have played number 8 for Ashbourne, and that named Dippy, super athlete, but he just got a breakaway try. So like everything just went totally. A lot of frustration with some of the decisions, but to be honest, my way of looking at rugby, any sport is, if you play accurately, you play well, you can beat any decisions that are against you. But if you're not playing well, all those little decisions that go against you make for more frustration, and just look, it didn't go away. And look, fair, not putting down any excuses for anything. Not me played well. They were up for it. They're a J2 club. It was their first team. They were really hungry for silverware, and look, I have to say, hats off. They gave us some their catering afterwards and their hospitality. Like, they did a barbecue, give everyone burgers and sausages, all and everything. It's like, you couldn't ask for a nicer day. The sun was shining. Look, we'll get over it. We're really disappointed, but sure, the lads had their beers and whatever on the way home, and they had a good night afterwards. And look, that's sport, and that's why we play it. Well, it just gives us the egg on to come back next year. But look, I have to say, well done to the whole lot of them, and their management, Paul and Tubby and the lads. They just really, really, and Ed Keaton, they just really, really stuck it in there all year. So hats off to everybody involved. And I have to, as president of the club, like I'm so proud of them. As I said, the results didn't go on the day, but that's sport. And lads, as I said, you will be good numbers training during the week beforehand, and in May, playing in May. It's just great to have rugby in May and that many players out. So look, it's good for the club and good for going forward. So let's put it behind the lads. Will put it behind them. We'll move on and regroup for next season.
Absolutely, and it's a little bit of a break now for the lads, of course, and take all that momentum, as much of it as you can, into next year. Anyway, just on local stuff before we head across to the provincial stuff, or the Heineken Champions Cup, just congratulations to Kilkenny Rugby Club. They were named our April winner of the David Buggy Motors and KCLR Kilkenny Sports Star Award. Of course, the fellas were Town's Cup champions this year, and the women's team as well won the Division 5 Cup, as well as all their league exploits for the women, and all the under-8 teams as well. It recognises the whole club for this year, so congratulations to them. Tom, on to the provincial stuff at the weekend. You went up to watch Munster Toulouse up in the Aviva Stadium. I was watching it on a laptop. And of course, I'm a Leinster man out and out, and that, but we always support the other Irish provinces, however they're going or wherever they're going, and different competitions. That was some match between Munster and Toulouse, and like the rest of a lot of people and yourself, you probably needed a defibrillator by the end of it. It was just that sort of a game, but it was such a good atmosphere. You could feel it through the TV or whatever way you were watching it. You were at the match as well. It was it's terrible how it ended up, but what a game as well.
It was absolutely, Jesus, it was unreal. It really was a sea of red. I have to say, hats off to Munster. They their supporters club and their club as a whole got behind the team. After having a really poor kind of mid-season, early season. They started well, mid-season kind of drifted off. All the thing with Van Graham leaving, players leaving, what they turned their season around, and they have the game against Exeter, the game against Ulster, and then to come into this at the weekend was hats off them, because the supporters were unbelievable. The place was just a complete sea of red. There was no... it's a long time since I've been in the Aviva that there was nobody coming in and out with drinks passing me by. Everybody was intent on the game. It was the first time, long time, wait till half time that everybody was just running, to get a break from it. But it was the atmosphere to start with before we get into rugby was cracking, absolutely cracking, and I'm sure
It's great.
that
Great day as
it'll
well.
be the same. It'll be the same again this weekend. Just unfortunately, I can't get up, but it, I'm presuming it'll be the same. You know, you have to. Yeah, it was just from the start of it, from the pre-match singing, you know, the stand up and fight, and then into that. And at one stage, they had the Cranberry Zombie started playing just at the end of half time, and I have to say the hairs nearly stood on the back of my neck. It was, but now onto the more important part, the rugby. It was an outstanding game. Munster really, really, really stuck it to them. You know, it is their accuracy was so much better than it had been before. The way that there was ball going out the back. It was, you know, trying to get the ball wide. You know, I know they got caught on the scrum a couple of times, but that was we said it last week. We were a bit, you know, that was one thing we were afraid of was the scrum. But their accuracy this week was just phenomenal. It was way, way better. It was something that's going to, I know, going forward will give everyone, and not just in Munster, but everyone across the country, kind of a little bit of a boost for them, that we might actually have, I know, another province really competing. You know, the country needs it. Leinster needs it. You know, to see that there was a couple of unfortunate little things that went wrong. The try the last try that went in, the third try. I know Mahoney got, there should have been a penalty there. What do you call him? The out half went in. He definitely went in, and it went in the side, and it should have been a penalty. And just off that, then from the line out, they got that try. You know, but you can't really say anything between him. Young Condellan was absolutely outstanding. He has to be one.
Yeah.
Like, that kid is, and we are saying kid to me anyway.
He is,
anyone that's around 28 years of age to me now is a kid. But like, he just rose again. He had a massive game against Ulster, you know, but just kind of stepped up one more step. And the subs that came on were phenomenal. I think that we had little issues with, probably when it comes down to the end, losing O'Mahony was a massive loss. It wasn't taken off. He was taken off on the basis of injury, not on, because there's no way he would have been taken off to the end, you know, if he could have stayed on to the end of that game. And I think when it came down to it, and we went in for, especially in the last minutes of the extra time when we were coming up to a chance at a drop goal, I think everything was that bit rushed. If you look back on previous, you know, historical games where Munster went through the phases, and it was just so, you know, we'll just chance it. We're going to go through 20 phases, 25 phases, and we're not going to give up until we're in a right prime position, and then we're just going to take our time, give the ball back, and, you know, O'Gara slotted it over. But there's no reason. I would kind of wondered why Joey Carberry didn't stand up coming into those last phases and maybe stood in instead of Healy, either just with a bit more experience under that massive pressure. And like, you're in a cauldron of complete pressure from all the Munster fans looking in, that you haven't had that atmosphere before. There's no way Healy had that atmosphere before. No. Whereas you look at Joey Carberry would have had that attitude coming into from
All Blacks
playing
in
Chicago especially, and the kicks that he got during the autumn, even the autumn internationals and stuff. So I don't understand why there was. Maybe he doesn't have the. I don't know. He doesn't seem to push himself, or it's just not that aggressive. I mean, that was Sexton. There's no way. If Sexton was playing full back, he'd burst his way through everyone to get to stand into that pocket, you know. And I think the same when it came down to the kicks, the pressure kicks at the end, when I went into the penalty kicks. Carberry actually took the easier side, whereas Healy took the harder kicks. And if you were to think about it, it doesn't make sense that why Joey didn't step up and say, why he wasn't to stand up and say, look, I'll take the hard, this side is not your normal. They're both the same right-footed kickers.
Yeah.
So they're both going to have one side that's not as good as the other.
Yeah, so the right-hand side kicks were going to be
Yeah.
hard all the time, yeah.
So you're putting the pressure on Healy, who's a young player, as I said, didn't have all that experience. And I know he has got the boot of a fantastic boot. We saw him, it was this one, was the Scarlets or someone, I can't remember the game in Wales, when he came on the first time, he was really kind of introduced to the senior thing, and he kicked a kick from inside his own half straight through the post to win the game. But that wasn't pressure. There was, it didn't have the crowds. It didn't have that whole weight. I mean, as a young player, again, having that pressure. But look, I think it's a little bit of experience, and these things are going to have to go forward. Leinster have had so many years under the cot, getting to that and getting their finals. They've got a format of winning, whereas Munster are behind in that belief and the little bit of the final bit of accuracy. It's an awful pity because Jesus would have been some match this weekend to have the two teams, and we could have knocked out Toulouse. Toulouse supposed to be the best team in the world, or the best club side basically in the world, best club side in Europe last year. They were made look very vulnerable, very beatable, and it's an awful pity because Munster could have done it, and what a weekend we would have had this weekend.
Like Crow Park 2009.
Yeah, it's going to go back to, and it would be just a fantastic. It just, it could have been another game for history, but look, they'll have to wait and
it was nearly. It would have been like the reverse of 2009. Leinster were coming in as the underdogs, and Munster were flying high at the time, and it could have been the changing of the guard this time. You know yourself. Leinster were the ones flying high with all the expectations, and Munster come to the Aviva Stadium for it and beat us. And I'm always worried about Munster, regardless, as a Leinster supporter. I'm worried about Toulouse this weekend. You just never know. I think overall, Tom, the defeat to Leinster by Munster in Thomond Park a month or so ago, there was a real feeling of the straw that broke the camel's back with that, because it was around the time of the announcements of Van Graan leaving, and then who's going to take over, and Munster, they're in a what's going to happen, there's so much uncertainty in that, and then the next couple of champions, there was one or two games after that, then Munster really stood up and the atmosphere came back. You were down at that match in Thomond Park. Things started to turn a bit, and they've been on that ever since. And then with the coaching ticket, like we've spoken about on the show, being secured, that brings on a bit of confidence. And Jesus, that match last weekend is going to do worlds of good for Munster. And then Munster playing Leinster in a few weeks in the Aviva again. And you know what? If Leinster are keeping their eye on a final, if they beat Toulouse this weekend, that could be Munster's little smash and grab.
Look, I think it's. Look, we keep saying that, and we said it from the start of this podcast. You always need to have your provinces firing to produce the best team that Ireland can produce. Because we never know. It's grand to say, yes, Leinster have so many players and they are developing amazing players, and it is a phenomenal team. But what happens if we're missing the player who just doesn't, because Munster are not firing, decides, I don't think I'll play rugby. I might go play some guys there, he's in between football or hurling and rugby, and that guy could have been the next full back for Ireland or the next centre or whatever it is, and all of a sudden he kind of goes because the province is not firing, he goes off and plays another sport. So if all the provinces are firing, there's atmosphere and it brings a buzz back into the Limerick, and brings a buzz back into Cork, or it brings a buzz back into Galway, or back into up to Belfast, and all of a sudden then kids are looking at this, and the next minute, oh Jesus, I might go play. Oh, I've been offered an academy. Oh, maybe I'll take that academy instead of playing football for Cork or whatever, or hurling for Galway. Absolutely. And so I think it has done the world a good. Yeah, it was a real. That game did turn it, I'd say, for Munster more than anything else. But I think it's I think they're starting to get themselves back on track again, and it's great. It's great to see, and we are looking. Everyone will look forward to seeing the Munster playing Leinster again, 2 weekends away. But we have big game ahead with Leinster this weekend, which is after last weekend. I thought Leinster were really, really good. I think they're first the way they went out and got stuck into Leicester. I don't think they allowed Leicester. I don't allowed Leicester to play. Leicester didn't play well.
Yeah, they didn't, Tom. I didn't think, and because I was watching the Munster match, I missed the tries for Leinster until I flicked it over. I was like, they're 20-0 up or whatever it was at the time. But Leinster started really strong. They sort of blew them away quickly. And Jesus got 2 tries up, or 2 tries in the penalty, I think it was 14, 15, 17 points. Yeah. That really starts planting seeds out in your head. It doesn't matter if you're at home or whatever it is, but like two tries and a penalty to try and catch up, 2 converted tries and penalty, that's tough going. But I thought, I don't know. I probably expected more from Leicester, but then again, was that Leinster? Hard to know.
I think Leicester didn't play well. I thought in the second half, just we didn't get home. It was well over by the time I got home, out of the Aviva. But it's after watching the game again and looking at it, I think in the second half, I think Leicester, when they tried to get it wide, actually there is areas I'd say Cullen will be a little bit concerned about, because I think in the second half when they started getting the ball, Leicester started getting the ball wide. They did put Leinster under pressure, and there is Leinster not infallible either, So,
no.
And I think as the game progressed, I think Leicester got more into it. Their accuracy kind of got a bit better there. They started to spread the ball wide, and I'm surely you'll have a few concerns. Like Sexton got a bit of a bang again. Keane Healy's, is dodgy enough for this weekend.
Touch and go, yeah.
But I have to say this: Gibson Park is awesome, and he has just got better and better and better and better. And if I was to look, I watched both games. I actually watched some of the Munster game again afterwards, and then watched the full Leinster game and flicked between them. And Gibson Park is definitely on the heels of Dupont as the best scrum half around.
Yeah,
he is just, I don't know what it is lately. He's just matured and just.
Yeah.
And I think
Andy Farland lads have spotted that, and a lot of people were questioning, why is he, why is he on the Ireland? You know what I mean? There was all that stuff as well, but he's justified himself a lot, especially for Leinster and in the Ireland internationals as well, Tom.
Well, look, everybody would have said Luke McGrath was the up and coming, was going to be the next Irish scrum half. And Luke is a fantastic player, and I mean, you can see what he does for Leinster. When Gibson Park is not there, and he goes in as captain and so on. But that was kind of said, why was Gibson Park there? But he has just really taken the mantle. He's just really taken the horse by the reins and just gone for it. His pass is electric. It's just so quick. Everything is moved.
Decisions.
He's actually decision making in defence is just as good. I mean, there's one thing, we've all said Conor Murray has gone slower and whatever, and his box kicking, but we've always looked at Conor Murray as being a superb defender, and that was one of the things to have him there. And I'd say it was their decision why they picked Murray to start. Definitely to start against Toulouse, because to keep Dupont, I mean, you have to watch him. Whereas I think Gibson Park is equally is his defensive game is becoming superb. The way he's running the defense, he's controlling that defense from scrum half. He's also electric you have to watch him. He can take the ball himself. He can cut. He will take a dart. If the gap opens, he's gone. So you have to watch him. He is, as I say, he's a superb pass. His decision making is cracking, and I think he's really on the heels of Dupont as one of the best scrum halves in the world at the moment.
Yeah, and he even poached. Didn't poach. He jackals against Leicester the weekend and got your man for holding on. And I was there looking and says, that Gibson Park. And it was. But yeah, it's just sign of the strength of the lad as well. He couldn't be moved off your man anyway. But yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And that takes a bit of pressure off Johnny Sexton, because I think there was a lot of talk about playmaking and decision making with Leinster and the half backs and everything. And I've noticed more and more, Tom, and I think it's been said on the podcast as well, that if the likes of Gibson Park, Luke McGrath and those lads sort of, guiding the team around the pitch a bit more, that it's not all Johnny, whether he's first receiver or not, it's not all on his shoulders all the time either as well. And that helps, of course, as well. Takes the pressure off, and that you don't have Johnny right up on the line every time, even though that's where he wants to play. Like,
yeah, and I mean, I think Leinster need Johnny so much. So if he can take some of the pressure off, it can be nothing but good. But I mean, I think Leinster are a different team this season compared to last season. I think just their pack, the front row are really solid.
And the replacements as well.
You have an Irish starting front row. You have two of the best hookers. We probably have the two best hookers in the country. So and there's very little difference between the two. Porter is just getting better and better and better each game. So when you have a front row, the whole spine of the teams. I always look at the spine of a team, saying like you go from your hooker, your 8, your 9, your 10, and your 15 is the spine of a team, and we have probably, I would say, near enough the best spine of a team, and definitely in Europe. And
I totally agree.
And probably further afield. But I mean, just look at us as Europe. Like there is that whole spine of Leinster's team, and everything works from there. The control from there. It's just. I hope now when we go to the weekend, I'm sure Toulouse will look at how they can, the same way as Munster had to control Dupont. I'm sure Toulouse will have to say, how do we control Gibson Park? What can we do to close Gibson Park down? What can we do to close Johnny? And I'm sure they're going to, as normal, will target Johnny, because our Johnny knows nothing else but going forward, and he doesn't really mind the old body. So I'm presuming, he will be targeted. But I think that's why sometimes just get rid of the ball, Johnny, sometimes, and don't be keen.
Let's take the punishment.
But then we want it, like, what do you do? Because he doesn't know how to mind himself anyway. So he's going to take the ball to the line. If you're taking the ball to the line, you're in a position there to get that everyone is looking for that split second hit, and the ball is passed just as the ball is passing just to give a little dink, So, but I think Toulouse are a very, very beatable team. There is ways to beat them. I think Leinster at home, if they and I won't be saying if they've half the atmosphere that was there last weekend behind them, we couldn't hear the Toulouse supporters were up in kind of one corner, and every so often you'd hear them, and then they were just drowned out. So it is. You are going to as I said, last week was a sea of red. This week's going to be a sea of blue. So the little red corner would seem very small. No matter how many pages they say, no matter what they say. I think this week, I think Leinster will do. I said it earlier after Munster went out. The first thing I said, and after seeing the results of the weekend, I said it's going to be a La Rochelle Leinster final.
Yeah, that's what I think myself.
But then again, so Racing had a queer good game the other day. So
yeah, I know.
Mr. O'Gara will have to play his best to beat them too. They wasn't expecting. They had a phenomenal game, and I'm sure Mike Prendergast would love to have one last hurrah with Racing before he packs up and goes home. But
back to Limerick.
But it's going to be, I think, one way or the other. Okay, look, we're a betting man. I'd have to say it's going to be a La Rochelle Leinster final.
That's the hope, anyway. In a way, Munster. I know it's been said jokingly as well. It's probably softened up Leinster a bit, Munster have softened up Toulouse a bit. I suppose Toulouse At the same turnaround as Leinster, a couple of hours more maybe, but they had to fly home and train and fly back, and back to the same to the Viva again, obviously as well, and probably a higher intensity game than Leinster's game against Leicester at the weekend. Like Leinster did their work in the first 20, 30 minutes, first half, and then sort of sat back. I felt anyway, sat back into second gear and sort of cruised home and got the job done, and mind the bodies as well, thinking ahead to the next week or whatever. I don't know if that's the actual fact, Tom, but that's how it appears anyway. But Toulouse have that as well, so they have a bit of pressure to know how good we are. Yeah, I think the mental challenge for Toulouse is bigger this week.
Yeah, because it's kind of, I suppose it's the opposite on Leinster. I know some of the games when they're playing, I shouldn't say weaker teams, or when they're playing sometimes in the URC, that they'll suddenly go bang, they'll throw out, they'll get a few tries in, and all of a sudden they're ahead. And then after that, then you said it doesn't matter whether it's soccer, whether it's rugby. If a team gets a good lead like that, you tend to just kind of sit back a tiny bit. It's very hard to keep it up, but it's normally the opposite for Leinster when it comes to the big game. It's, the slow start is tight, and then bang, they hit you in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think with Toulouse, I think they have the difference between Leinster and Munster when it comes down to the last 20 minutes of the game, or last 10 minutes of the game, or even if it did go just by the mad chance that another game will go to extra time. I just think Leinster have too much experience on the bench and too much experience on the pitch. Munster didn't have that. As good as Craig Casey is, when it came down to the real crunch, you're just missing that bit of real experience. And
absolutely.
And that's back down to the Leinster players that played for Ireland and have played against the All Blacks and have had the big, it's their pressure games, they're the cauldron games, they're the ones that are really going to bring them on. And I just think that little bit of experience, I think they're a different kettle of fish to Munster against Toulouse. I think at the end of it, I think Leinster really have that. They have the players that they have on the bench to come on, and the experience that is even on the bench.
It's ridiculous.
I really think they just. I think Toulouse will crack it. I think if they get in on them, I think he can crack Toulouse, because I don't think they won't get it their own way.
Yeah, what do you reckon, Tom? Will Leinster go out and try and blow Toulouse away early on and do that sort of a scenario? Because Toulouse will drop the heads if there's a try, or 10, 12, 13, 14 points go in on them. Well, it's easier said than done now.
Well, they're going to go. Of course, they're going to go for it. And I mean, we have a good mod. They're going to go. Like Toulouse, of course, are going to. Where are they going to attack? They are going. It's just common sense that they're going to try and attack the pack.
Yeah.
They're going to try and do what La Rochelle did last year. They are going to try and hit them up front. But this is a different Leinster team. This is a team that has experience. They've gone through that. Even their young fellas going to South Africa at that time. I mean, the players they're used to bigger games. They're used to more physicality. I think our pack has improved. I think our pack is improving week in, week out. And I think it's going to be so tight. I think Leinster will go out and just try and hit them early.
Yeah.
But I think I still think if it's going to be down to the last couple of minutes of the game. The last 20 minutes is really where I see that. I think that's where the game will be won or lost, is definitely the last 10, 15, 20 minutes of the game, when bodies are really sore and bodies are tired. And I do think that the game that Toulouse had against Munster would be would be far more draining than the game that Leinster had against Leicester.
Yeah.
But look,
rugby
is sport and cups are cups, but we'll have our fingers crossed and everyone will be shouting for Leinster. I mean,
exactly. It'd be
last Irish team
left in it, and against 3 French teams, I suppose. I know it'd be the hard one to watch. if the Leinster are changing their front row and you've got Dan Keane Healy if he's fit, and Michael Alalatoa coming on as well, like that's a serious front row. Never mind all the other players. James Ryan was back, of course, last week as well. He did serious work at the line out, Tom. A lot of steals, and just you'd think he was never away. Like he was incredible,
That wrestled to him. That's done him the world of good. And Ryan had, there was a time it was kind of given out about Ryan that he wasn't performing. Didn't think he deserved his Irish place. But he does do an awful lot of dog work as well. He's not a big ball carrier. He's not the one that's going to make the big runs and all the glamour, But he does do, if you watch him and study him as he goes, his dogged work, the work that he does around in ruck time and off the ball and different things, he just does that dirty work that you don't see. And he's a huge asset to have back. Absolutely huge asset to have back in.
I think if Leinster get over Toulouse at the weekend and La Rochelle do the job on Racing, I think Leinster probably love to face La Rochelle after what happened last year. It'd be a nice little sort of narrative, Tom, to finish out the year, but we won't count our chickens yet. With a game to play on Saturday still. But it's been like, a couple of months ago we were talking about the Heineken Cup this year and it was all going to be a farce. And of course Leinster had to give the walkover that Montpellier were given that game because of all the COVID stuff at the time and that. But it's actually turning out to be a half decent. This side of the tournament, the knockout parts as well, it's been pretty okay so far. Like we had, Connacht got into the round of 16 and that as well. So, I don't know, Leinster faced, it hasn't been half bad. Like,
no, it's been cracking. And the last couple of games, as it moved on from the Exeter game down to Thomond, and from that weekend, from the quarterfinals into the quarterfinals, it's been there's been some fantastic rugby, and I wonder you talk about it, but what's the other one? The other competition, the London Irish and
Challenge Cup.
The Challenge
Cup.
And London Irish and Toulon was a cracking game and some fantastic rugby played.
Yeah.
And there has been some really, really good rugby on that tournament as well. So, I mean, there is, if you look at it, and anybody who's into rugby, there's a huge amount of really, really good games have been played last weekend. And I think this weekend we're going to have 4 more games. You got the Challenge Cup games are just as good. We kind of forget about because it's not getting the profile TV wise but you also remember, like, there is teams. Saracens are down there. Touloners are in it. So I mean, the big teams are
former
in
champions.
That as well. Yeah, because one thing and another in COVID, they've ended up down there. So I think it's going to another cracking weekend of rugby. Can't wait.
Absolutely. And just some news there that popped in during the week. The EPCR have dropped that 2-legged round of 16. So we won't be playing Connacht home and away, basically, if it was this year. I don't know. What do you think of the 2-legged thing, Tom? I don't know what to think about.
It gave us good games.
More rugby,
be short and sweet about it.
Didn't work.
Cup rugby is, to me, is knockout. It's, you have 2 teams turned up on the day. One is always favourite. There's always a favourite, and there's one underdog. And in cup rugby, there's so many times that underdog gets the performance of a season and knocks out the favourite. I think especially with the likes of Leinster, you get one pop at Leinster. You can beat them if you beat them, you're going to beat them in the first game. You ain't going to beat them in the second game. After you beat them once, they'll definitely come back at you the next time. That's just using Leinster, but I mean, any team, you can turn it around. Like Munster lost against Exeter away at Exeter. They got, but they kept the points down to enough. There was about 5 points in it. So when the turnaround came, you were brought at home in Park, and if they played anyway for the crowd or had any passion at all, they were going to throw the kitchen sink at it, and they did, and they won the game. So you have that, but to me, it still takes away from cup rugby is you get one chance. You get one chance at it. It's and that's the way. It does make it more exciting. We don't need that extra game. You don't need that extra. Rugby doesn't need that extra game, TV wise. It just doesn't. We have enough rugby in seasons long enough as it is without having extra.
It brought a few bob to the clubs that were involved, of course, with the home and away legs on it. The year after COVID restrictions and all that sort of stuff. So I suppose it had that sort of a advantage to it. But going forward with everything back to normal, there's no real need for it as well. I think the general consensus is, leave it, go back to the old format and stick with that. Tom, we'll probably wrap it up there, I'd say, for the week. If Leinster beat Toulouse this weekend, we'll do another podcast. We'll keep her going and we'll follow Leinster in anyway and the other progress of that. But the local season is wrapped up now, so the lads are getting a well-earned, lads, ladies, and everyone else getting a well-earned rest as well. There's a couple of tag rugby tournaments happening in Kilkenny. There's a Marble City Sevens.
The Marble City Sevens is on in Kilkenny, which is for anybody out there who's actually listening and wants, they should put teams in or go down and watch it or get a tent and stay for the night, because I tell you, it's great. It is great. It's great. It is great old crack. And there's a couple of sevens tournaments around. You have the Midnight Sevens in Tullamore, which is another superb event. They play the sevens through the night.
It starts at night time and runs through. That's what's called the Midnight Sevens. The finals at midnight, I think, or something like that. Not like midnight mass. It's at 8 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah. And it has been really successful pre-COVID. So, looks plenty to keep us going over. Plenty to keep us going over the summer. And we have autumn internationals back and summer internationals, and
we do
plenty out there.
Yeah, they're off to New Zealand as well, so a lot to watch during the summer and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, that's grand. Well, we'll wrap it up there. Tom Crotty, Horst, president of Carlow or County Carlow Football Club, Rugby Club,
for another couple of weeks. Another couple of weeks, Steve. What are you going to call me then? Just be Tom then.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, actually, tell us about that, Tom, while we have you live on air. So a few weeks left, and then it's just it's a year long presidency.
Yeah, we only do a year long. We have I have my last official game being president was the J2s. We have my dinner, which is the President's Dinner Dance, or the Carlow Dinner Dance and President's Dinner and Awards, is next Friday night in the Dolman. If anybody wants tickets, they're still available. It's going to be a good night. I have to get it out there. And then we have our AGM it's in June, I think. And then I will hand over the mantle to Mr. Derek Cope, who's our director of rugby, and Derek will do it.
Oh, no, Derek.
Yeah, Derek, and Derek's a great, really, really good. He's been our director of rugby, and I'm be handing it over to a very safe set of hands. Look, I've enjoyed my year anyway. It just really has.
Good, Tom.
Really have enjoyed it. It's been with the crap start to the year, and we didn't know what we were going to get out of it. But look, it's been phenomenal for me. I've met a lot of people as I went along, and we've had the old podcast. Started off with the podcast every week, so it's been great. I've really, really enjoyed it. And the club is in good hands at the moment, and we're happy.
I was in a tag rugby team with Derry Cope a few years ago when it was on in Carlow, so I got to know him that way. No, he's great club man.
Absolutely.
Loves it up there. Yeah, it's absolutely stuck in with it up there. But sure, Tom. Well, fingers crossed. Now we'll be talking about Leinster and Racing / La Rochelle next week. Ronan O'Gara versus Johnny Sexton. There's so much that can't wait if that's the case. And fingers crossed, Leinster do a job against Toulouse at the weekend. But of course, Leinster Munster in a few weeks in the URC. I forgot about the URC. We still have that for a few weeks as well. There was me wrapping up the season already.
I think the URC will kind of keep us. Actually, it's going to be good. With South African teams coming in, so I think up next we have a little bit to chat about for another week or two. People might put up with us for another couple of weeks.
Yeah, grand. We'll try and get Mr. Blanchfield and Mr. Tobin back as well. Tom, we'll wrap it up there. It's been the Knock on KCLR and Scoreline.ie's weekly rugby podcast, available on Scoreline.ie and on all streaming platforms as well.